Hey guys, I'm Anna. Thank you so much for watching. Today's Monday, so it's going to be part 5 of our story videos. And I'm going to pick up where I left off last week, which was I had been robbed and then had no more money and was completely strung out and scared and alone up in the Roadway Inn in North Seattle. And I ended up calling my mom for help because at this point I don't even think I'd talked to my family for months. I pretty much kind of cut myself off from everybody and was just doing my own thing. But I was in a situation where I was very scared and alone, and I didn't even have, any more money to pay for one more night in my motel room. And I was kind of having a mental breakdown. So I called my mom, and my poor mother had to come pick me up and see her strung out daughter basically having a total meltdown, mental breakdown situation. And her first thought at this point was that I needed to go to treatment, which I completely agreed with. And at this point, my initial motive in this was not only that I was scared and alone and didn't have anywhere to turn, but that my daughter's dad at this point had he'd gone to a treatment center. He had put himself in treatment, and I had missed him a lot, and I was scared and alone, and I wanted to be with him. So I called my mom, and I actually lied and told her that I detoxed myself and that I wanted to go to treatment. And I somehow figured, not really sure how, that I would finagle my way into having her bring me to the same treatment center that he was at, even though that's never recommended, and be able to be there with him. So she very quickly realized that no, I'm not taking you to the same treatment center. That's not going to be healthy for either one of you. And she tried to send me to the sister treatment center of that same organization. It was in a different city. So we went there, and of course they UA'd me and realized that I still had drugs in my system. I actually had not detoxed, and I wasn't able to go in until I went to a detox facility to detox. So that was something I was not willing to do again because in one of our previous videos I explained that I had to go to detox, and it was a horrifyingly scary experience for me. And at this point, I guess I was not willing to do that. I actually honestly didn't even really think that I wanted treatment again, but my main motive in that was to be able to be with my daughter's dad. She tried driving me to the detox, and I threw a tantrum. Now, mind you, my experience before had not been that great. I mean, I had walked into it hearing shouts and screaming and crying from the patients in there, which, I mean, honestly, it's normal. People coming off of drugs is a very painful process. But the nurse, the clinician, the first clinician that talked to me and checked me in was a man going into a transformation into being a woman, and he had these big, beautiful breasts, and but everything else of him was a man, and his name was Diane, and you kind of gotta understand that my mindset in this whole thing was like, this is all very new to me, and so I was horrified, I was scared, I was angry that I had to be there in the first place, and he ended up being a wonderful guy, and I remember calling my mom probably 50 times. I was begging for people's quarters to call her on the payphone there and screaming at her, telling her she needs to get me out of here. This is where crazy people live, and I don't belong here. And I'm pretty sure she thought that was exactly where I belonged at that point. I was like throwing a major tantrum. So anyways, that was the first time in detox, and so that had been my experience, and I just really did not want to have to deal with that again. I didn't want to go there again. It was not a fun thing for me to have to do the first time. So my mom was urging me to do that. She drove me all the way to the detox center. We were sitting in the parking lot, and I completely lost it. I mean, I was malnourished, I was sleep deprived, I was strung out, and I just started flailing and freaking out and kicking the dashboard and screaming and yelling and telling her that I needed her to take me home with her. I didn't want to do this here. And she ended up calling the police on me because she was like, you need to get out of my car and go in here. You can't come home with me. Because at this point, my daughter was actually at her house, and I was in no shape to have to go there. So anyway, I ended up fleeing the scene after she called the police, which I can't blame her for now. I was literally freaking out. And before I knew it, I found myself, by myself, a little 20-something-year-old white girl running around the streets of Seattle, and it's starting to get dark, and I'm panicking, and Again, I have no money. I have a huge duffel bag full of my crap that I'm carrying around, and I don't know where I'm going. And so it turned out to be quite the adventure, and I finally got a hold of one of my girlfriends, and she came and rescued me for the night, and I stayed the night with her. And then a very dear friend of mine had, I believe the next day, ended up coming, and he brought me home with him and helped me to detox again. So that's where I'm going to leave off now. But thank you guys so much for watching. We love doing this, and I'm going to let you guys listen to my mom. I'm sure she's got a lot of great things to say about this crazy experience. So please watch and stay tuned. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hi again, I'm Anna's mom. So we left off where Anna was living in the North End, working as a prostitute, and I hadn't heard from her for a long time. And then I finally got a call from Anna. She was calling me from a payphone. She said she was on the side of the road outside of her motel that she was living in, and she was hysterical. And it was really difficult to even understand anything that she was saying. But she was asking me to come and get her and take her to rehab is what I got out of that. She thought somebody was after her. It sounded like she was being attacked while I was talking to her, although I did not hear anybody else's voice there. So it was a pretty terrifying telephone call. At that moment, I was at home with the baby and some of the other three or four daughters who were living there at the time, and just quickly made arrangements to go and find her. But I wasn't even 100% sure where she was. So it took me a while, and of course it was rush hour traffic in Seattle, and we were coming from out in the boonies. So it took me probably a couple of hours to get to her. I talked to her several times on the phone during that time, and she was not okay. I thought she was having a psychotic episode. I had been really concerned that whatever she was using, the meth especially, was really deteriorating her brain. And anyway, that's what I thought was going on. When I got there, she was safely in her room, ready to go. And by that, I mean she looked very strung out. Her eyes were vacant. She had huge dark circles under her eyes. She looked really thin, and she looked really strung out. So we needed to collect her things in this dirty motel room. And her things consisted of about 4 or 5 plastic shopping bags, like, from the grocery store. 2 of them were filled with her clothes, which were basically hooker lingerie. And then she had another one that was just candy, nothing but crappy candy. And there was candy junk all over the room, candy garbage. So she'd been eating a lot of candy. And then the other 2 bags were filled with crayons and pens and pencils, colored pencils, and Disney princess coloring books. So yeah, I was picking up my drug addict daughter who was working as a prostitute and who ate only candy and apparently colored Disney princesses in her spare time. That felt really tragic. She clearly hadn't eaten in quite a while. As it turned out, probably days, if not weeks. She hadn't eaten anything but candy and done anything but meth and heroin. So she assured me that she had a bed date at a rehab facility, and that she had been cleaned up and detoxed already for 3 days, and that they would accept her in there. And so she first wanted me to take her to the same rehab facility that her boyfriend was then in. No go, no way, Jose. They wouldn't have let her in there even if I thought it was a good idea. And we found another location they would accept her in, and I was really not buying that she had detoxed. She didn't look detoxed. She looked strung out, but she kept insisting, and I didn't have a test with me. So we got in the car. We stopped and got her some food on the way, and we were driving. I was driving as fast as I could from one end of Seattle to the complete opposite end of Seattle on a Friday rush hour traffic, trying to get her to this rehab facility in time for her to get in that night. And we did finally make it down there, and she did not pass a urine test to get in. Of course. I wasn't surprised. I was pretty upset though, because I had just gone out and spent like $78 on Nicorette that she was going to be able to use in the facility because they didn't allow smoking, and they wouldn't let me take it back. So they said, okay, you have to go to a detox facility. And there's one at the hospital down the road, or you can go to RCKC, the regular, state-run or King County-run detox facility in Seattle. So she didn't want to go to the hospital, and I started driving her back to RCKC in Seattle at this point. But she didn't want to go there. She wanted to go home with me and detox at my house, which I knew I couldn't do. Partially because the time before she'd been in detox at RCKC, she was out of her mind. And I had her, sisters and stepsisters and her baby daughter at home at my house, and couldn't have her out of her mind there. When she'd been in before, she'd called me over and over and over and over and over again from the payphone there. And I don't know who gave her all of the quarters to do that, but I really wanted to find them. She would scream and yell and curse at me, and mostly scream and yell and curse at me hysterically at the top of her lungs, and sometimes bang the phone and scream and yell and curse at me and tell me to come and get her out of there. And I won't repeat what she said, but she kept letting me know that place was for crazy people. And I kept thinking, seems like a perfect place for you right now. Don't understand the irony. Anyway, I knew she didn't want to go there, but I also knew I couldn't handle her while she was detoxing. I was literally afraid of what she would do. So we got her down to RCKC and got into the parking lot, and she refused to get out of the car, and she broke down and was sobbing and begging me to bring her home with me. My daughter, the prostitute with the Disney coloring books, who'd had what I thought was a psychotic episode earlier in the day, wanted to come home where she was safe and loved. And I couldn't let her. At least I couldn't see a way of letting her at that point, because she felt dangerous to me, and because I had her baby daughter there and the other girls there, and I didn't know how to handle. It was really, really, really hard to tell her, no, you have to go and do this. You have to go into this place. And I knew she hated that place, but I thought, this is what you have to do. And at some point with us going back and forth with this in the car, she flipped her lid and started screaming and kicking really, really hard the dashboard of my car and punching the window. And I was afraid she was actually going to break the window and, injure herself really badly. She was doing a pretty good job injuring the interior of my car. It was pretty horrible. I asked her to get out of the car. She was out of her mind at this point. There was no point saying anything, really. It was ineffective. So I got on my phone. I jumped out of the car and got on my phone and started calling the police. In which case she jumped out of the car and took off. She had one of her two bags with her, or she had two groups of bags by then, but she had one of the groups with her. I don't recall whether she brought with her the hooker lingerie or the coloring books, but either way. And she was gone again. And I was left, again, terrified and devastated and feeling like a complete and utter failure as a mother and even as a human being, because she just wanted to come home and I didn't let her. I still feel guilty about that every time I think about it. But I also don't know what I could have done differently. But it was pretty awful. When the police finally showed up, obviously Anna was gone, and they were
really sweet about wanting to look for her, and they didn't figure they'd find her. They couldn't really pick her up for much of anything at that point either. I just wanted to know she was safe. And it was, well, it was a really long time before I ever knew she was safe again. So that's enough for me for today. We'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.